Thank you all for having me. My name is Devin, and we're here at the Monterey SPCA showing Wildlife Rehabilitation MD, and I'm really excited to do it. So first of all, Wildlife Rehabilitation MD is a little bit of a tongue twister, so we also call it WRMD, W-R-M-D. And WRMD it's an online database. So being online means you can go to any computer that has internet access and go to it. And the URL up here you can see, if you can't see, is wrmd.org. And before we go into the database, I'll show you a few things that are outside on the public side. If we go up to the top and click on support, there's, on this page here, there's a lot of videos and tutorials and such that we've recorded that explain how to do some of the more common features in the database. So if you can't figure something out, you can probably watch one of these, or you can, there's a way to actually ask our help as well. And then there's other pages on here that can give you helpful information, like how to get started. But to just get right into it, either on the top of this page, you can click on this login screen, or if you're back on the home page, there's a login button there. And I should actually already say that the Monterey CA, you all already actually have an account here. Jessica set it up in February or whenever it was. And actually you have been using it this year, although a little bit slowly because you've been trying to transition. So some of you may already actually be familiar with how to get into it or what it looks like. But I'm going to log into my little personal dummy account so I don't mess up your records. So when we click on login, we go and put in our email and log in. All right, so the first thing it does is brings us to our, the dashboard page, which basically just has some just general statistics about what's going on with the records in this year. And basically the way that the database is laid out is the links across the top are basically links to go to get specific information about a case. So if I want to get the rescuer's contact information or initial care or continued care for any particular animal, that's where I would go. And then the links along the left are basically all different quick links of various types. So there's a group here that's called quick links. So if I wanted to create a new record, I could just click on this link. Or if I wanted to get a list of all the records in the database, I could go there, or I can do searches or sharing records. And these links on the left are on pretty much every screen. Let's see, what else can I show you real quickly? Well, the other thing is, so I'm logged in. If I went to settings, there's a lot of settings that I could set up. And I don't want to go through all of them because we could spend an hour just doing that. But basically, the super administrator of the account can create new users, and there's no limit to the number of users you can create. And you can assign certain permission levels to those users if you want to keep things a little bit more controlled. You can apply certain security settings to your account so you can try and prevent basically forced entry. So for example, I just mentioned that it's online, which is really, really nice. Because it means anybody at the clinic with a computer can get to it, or even if you're at home, you can log in and get to it. And that's like one of the really nice features, but also sort of prevents or comes with a security risk because maybe you don't want your people at home to log in. What you can do is you can quote restrict remote access. So basically block anybody who's not coming from the clinic's IP address. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But basically keep anybody who's not at the clinic from being able to log in. So that's one thing you can apply. And then,
but if we're using iPads to enter the data, it wouldn't be then going through our network, so we wouldn't be able to use that restriction.
If your iPad is connected through Wi-Fi, or well, not Wi-Fi, through
Wi-Fi.
Well, if it's through Wi-Fi, then it would be going through the network.
Yeah, these are 3G, but we can probably.
Right. So I was going to say, if it's going through the 3G network,
right.
through AT&T or Verizon, then you're right. It would be a different IP address, so it wouldn't work.
Okay.
However, that's a perfect segue. Because what you can do is you can say yes, restrict remote access and put in the clinic's IP address, but then you can override that and allow certain people to to have remote access. So for example, no, there's not the veterinarian, but very commonly the veterinarian of the clinic, they want to be able to get to the records from home. So you make it remote so nobody else can, but they can. And there are various other settings through here. If you really want to know about them, we can go through them later, but I'm going to skip over most of them for now. Okay, so back in the database. So the first thing obviously we'd want to do is want to create a record. So we'll go through that real quickly. So the link over on the left to create a new record is click, and brings you to this screen. And the short story is you just fill in the fields. The only required fields on here are to identify the species and the intake information for that. There's rescuer contact information as well, and none of those fields are required simply because you often don't know what you're going to get, if you're ever going to get any of it. So with the species, you type in the name, so Wilbur Smelly. And maybe just one of them came in, or it was a whole clutch of 4 of them that came in all at the same time. So you can change this to the number of patients that you're actually receiving at that moment. And then you would fill in the rescue information. Yes, ma'am.
Can you distinguish if it's eggs or?
Yes.
Putting it in right now, no, but once the record is created, yes.
Okay.
And I'll show you that when we get to that point. Yeah.
If we don't know what this bird is, which sometimes with our little tiny baby birds, can we just have a question and change that and fill it in later?
Well, okay, so the better thing to do would be to do unknown, oops, I can spell, unknown, hello. I can do it, I can spell it.
U-N-K.
There we are. So you could just say unknown bird.
All right.
Now, what I also should say is that you could type in question mark, and what will happen is you'll get this little error that comes and says, okay, the database has no idea what this species is that you're trying to create or enter in. You can use it, but reporting on this species will be less accurate because it doesn't know if it is a bird or a mammal or where it's geographically found. So it would be better to say unknown bird to at least know that it's a bird. Okay, let's go back to our photos. Okay, so the rescuer's contact information, which we could type in here. I'm just going to skip over it to save time. But you can also reuse existing rescuers. So if, Rachel, the person that brought in the animal, her name was Rachel, we can just type in. And well, maybe this is the right Rachel, select her and it'll reuse her. And she's from Disneyland, apparently. And then the intake information is all required. And if where the animal came from is the same address as the rescuer, you can just check this box and it'll pre-fill in those fields. Admitted by would be my name. The date found is typically going to be today, but maybe they found the animals yesterday or the day before.
Or 5 weeks ago.
Or 5, hopefully not. And then the observations is whatever they observed with that animal, and basically their story that they so desperately want to tell you. So, caught by cat.
So this intake is not when we received it, but when the person bringing it received it?
Yeah, so this information is like there's somebody, a member of the public, or it's one of the people that go and pick up animals. They are bringing it in and you are entering it into your system. So this is like the initial intake into the system. When the animal gets into your hands, you should enter it into the system.
Okay, but the date found would be not the date it was brought to us, but the date the person took it. Okay.
Yes.
And the date that it enters into here is actually a separate field. So there's no field in here to record that because it just does it automatically at the time that you create the record. Then the last field, what fed, is if the rescuer fed anything to the animal, which hopefully not.
Always any.
Milk.
No, right. And then lastly, I can, this sort of depends on the workflow of the clinic. You can either create these records and then stay on this screen to recreate more records, or you could create this record and then go directly to it and just start editing it. So I'll just choose that option. And so it brought me to, we had a accession admitted in 4 snowy plovers, and it brought me to the very first one, which is number 67. There is the 67th animal in the database for this year. And we're on the initial care screen. So if I went to the rescuer screen, it's Rachel from Disneyland, and it's all of her contact information for this plover. And you can actually see down here, these are all of the animals that Rachel has brought in ever, not just this year. Yes, she brought in a badger.
From Disneyland. From Disneyland, right?
Rachel has some rescue experience.
Okay, so on the initial care screen, so basically the initial care is like essentially the first 24 hours of care that you're giving that animal. It's your initial exam and the way you banded that animal, and the disposition as well. The intake information it's already been filled in because it was from the animal from the creation of the record. Identity is just ways to further more specifically identify the animal. Like if we put a band on it, like 1, 2, 3, yellow. Keywords and master problem. One other thing I should say is nearly all these fields are not required, so you don't have to put bands and keywords and all this. They're just nice features for you to use. But keywords are totally up to your discretion of whatever you guys decide are good, appropriate keywords. Like, so this plover was caught by a cat, so maybe a good keyword is cat, or whatever West Nile virus maybe. Who knows?
One of the nice things about keywords, if you decide on a bunch of keywords that you're going to use, you can always look up. So if you put cat into every single one, that animal that was caught by a cat, or there was a cat nearby, you could look up at the end of the year, how many birds were caught by cats this year? How many animals were caught by cats? How many squirrels were caught by cats? And you have that number right there in front of you. Or if it's dog, or if it's hit window, or if it happens to be some rodenticide or something like that, you can look it up at the end of the year really easily to find out how many.
Yeah. And then master problem is like, what is actually wrong with this animal? Broken wing or whatever. But down below, the initial exam is, the actual exam. All the specifics of all the different things that could be right or wrong with the animal. The only required fields on here are these ones that have been highlighted in red. And
Gender is required?
It is. So if you don't know, you can say unknown. So the reason that these few ones here are required is not for us to be like bullies and make everybody do it. It's because if at the very, very least, all you do is put in this information, at the end of the year or at the end of 5 years, the data that you're going to have, that historical data, is so valuable to you. So I'm trying to encourage at least, to get the most basic of information so that you can use it later on. So if you weigh the animal, and it could be, I don't know how much a plover weighs, 30 grams? Something like that? And then, okay, so to answer your question, so for the age, if it was an egg, I would say egg. But there are many other ones that you could pick.
So if we get in like 3 birds at a time from the same person, like we often get 2 eggs and a juvenile all brought to us at once. How do I distinguish between the individuals under the same intake?
So each. Yeah.
So I'd have to intake 3 different times?
No, you intake one time, and then remember it said how many? 3.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you spread it out there.
Then it would be each of these
Each one would
sections.
have their own
See,
record.
that's how he had 4, so there's 70,
Oh, okay.
68. Those
Right.
are the other
Okay.
parts of the 4.
So let me do this so I can update this record. So I'll just actually back over real quick and go to the list records screen. And you can see on the bottom there's 4 snowy plovers, and those are the last 4 animals succession into the database. And so those are those 4.
So you can call up a list of just pendings if you want to? Is that one of the
You
things
could.
you can do?
You could. So in this case, it's listing everything that's been admitted into the database, not whether it's pending or euthanized or whatever. So anyway, so you would go to each one of these records and update their information. Does that answer it? Okay, so back to the initial exam, okay, so all these fields here are different body parts, and you just fill them in as appropriate for the injuries or issues that you find. And on the bottom there's initial treatment, which is what kind of basic initial care did you give to that animal, like fluids or heat or medications or what have you. And then you can put your name. And then down at the bottom is disposition, and unfortunately, a large percentage of the animals don't make it past the first 24 hours, so you change their disposition to the appropriate one. And I'll say that pretty much all of these dispositions are the dispositions that U.S. Fish and Wildlife accepts on their urine report, with the exception of died over 24 hours and euthanized over 24 hours. And the reason that we've separated those out is because it's really helpful at the end of the year to know, of the animals that survived, or that did not die or were euthanized in the first 24 hours, how well did those animals do beyond?
We have one called euthanized on arrival. Where would that go in there?
So then you would choose euthanized in 24 hours, because it was euthanized within the first 24 hours. Or died on arrival? I'm sorry.
No, we have it euthanized on arrival. In other words, when they came in, they had to go to
Yeah, it'd be the euthanized in 24 hours.
Euthanized in 24 hours. Now on the federal urine report, it combines the dieds and the euthanized together, so it's one number. And then the last one here is void. If for some reason this record was totally a mistake, you cannot delete records, so you just, for the disposition, say void and basically void.
What does that do to your number that you have assigned to this animal?
It doesn't do anything to it. The number still exists, but the record is basically void.
So at the end of the year, it would still count it as one of our...
No, it doesn't count because it knows the disposition is void.
It knows it's void, so it just eliminates that number. So you could have a number of 1,000, but it would come up with 998 or something because we voided it a couple.
Wouldn't void the animal.
There would still be,
category, right?
If you had 5,000 animals or 1,000 animals and one of these was void, you're still going to have 1,000 animals. It's just that record isn't going to appear. You can't get rid of that number necessarily. So if you have usually voids are very rare. You might have one or two, so you just kind of call it a wash. Like you put on your thing, we received 2,569 animals. You're not going to say, well, 2 of them are void, so we actually received 2,567. It's rare that you have to void them though, once you get used to the system.
Yeah. The disposition was released. You can also specify the release type, like how it was released.
It's soft up there. They know about us.
If it was transferred, you should specify the transfer type, because U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants to know these on their urine report. Now, everybody always asks this, and I don't know what the answer is, but there is one of the dispositions is released, and one of the transfer types is released. You have to ask U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I have no idea why they have it that way. I just put in what they told me to put in.
And we can't add a note onto that. It's
no,
transferred.
but
If we put transferred, we can't put to IVR.
oh yeah, you can. So what you would do is you would say transferred, and transfer type would be continued care, and then under the location you would type in IVR. Well, IVR. Actually, they're just IVR now, and they're in California. Or you could type in International Bird Rescue, or you can type in there whatever works. And then, of course, you want to see the date that it was transferred. But hopefully, so this is a snowy plover, so it actually be transferred to the aquarium. You can also specify the enclosure, like where that animal is actually at the clinic at the moment. If you wanted to, you can keep enclosure history, which is helpful. And one other field, so criminal activity. Nearly all the animals will be no, obviously, or hopefully. But for the animals where there was some sort of criminal activity, you ideally should say yes, because that's another thing U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants to know. That will go onto the urine report. So if you say yes, it'll go on there.
Do the holding pattern.
Oh, yeah, and you can, okay, so holding at, you can specify if it's holding at your clinic or if it's gone off-site to some off-site location that you've got. 1 second. Or if it's gone to home care. Yes, ma'am?
So if we get an animal in that has, pellets in it or something, will we put criminal activity because it was shot?
Yeah, you should. I mean, it's not for me to tell you what you should be doing.
Is this going to hold both our exotics and our wildlife?
No, this is just for the wildlife.
We'll be using Shelter Buddy for our exotics. So they won't, right now they have 2 numbers, where they'll just have 1 number. It'll be really nice.
There's also something to keep in mind when you release, it's something that even when we were using the system before, always forget, if you do release an animal and you go to holding at, make it blank. Because otherwise, if you try to look up something, like I want to look up all the animals that are in home care or something like that, but half of them are released, but you didn't switch that information out, then it can get kind of confusing. So there's a whole process to closing out records.
So I'm not going to go and fill in stuff because I don't want to waste time doing that. But everybody understands this page? Any questions about this page? Yes?
So in a perfect world, we'd be able to enter the data on the day that the animal came to the clinic.
Right.
But that's not always the case. So if you're not able to enter it that day and you enter it the next day, you say the system assigns a date in. How do you manipulate that date so it's actually reflective of the date the animal came in?
Well, when you create the record, the date in is then. But if for some reason you needed to change that date, like if it came in the day before or whatever.
Exactly.
Up the top here's a link that says change species / date admitted.
Okay.
You just click that and change it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so yes.
What fields are not editable?
Any?
Other than
The only fields that are not, well, basically they're all editable. The only fields that are not editable is any of these fields where it's like a drop-down list. You can change the value, but you can't change the values in them. If that makes any sense at all?
Yeah, you can't create a new state.
Right.
right.
Although
Obviously.
apparently there's going to be a new state in Pakistan. A little island popped up. So one thing that you probably haven't seen because I've been down at the bottom of the screen is, and we may have to wait a few moments. Let's see if I can make a change. Cat, dog, yada yada. One thing that's been happening, and you might see it flash here real fast like that, is the database is auto-saved. So basically it knows that we've made some changes to this record, and basically there are lots of features in place to help prevent any data from getting lost or going away. So it starts to auto-save every 15 seconds once we've made a change to the record. So if you make your changes and then just walk away and you forget to say update record, that's okay. You should still click update record, but it's still okay because your data is still being saved. And one of the other things that's in place is if I come here and I make a change, yada yada, yes, it'll start auto-saving, but if I then try to go to the next screen, it says, hey, are you sure you want to do this before you actually press update? And even though, well, there you go. Okay, so now I've gone to the next record, which is 69 or 68, and I can page through any of the records. So 68 is the second of the snowy plovers, and I just go and fill their information. But if I went to continued care and actually go back to the previous snowy plover, this is the continued care is like the long-term history of that animal. Or like I said before, the initial care is sort of like the first 24 hours. And on the screen, the same exact identity information that we typed in on the initial care is found here, as well as the disposition information. The only thing that's different is the medical record. And basically, so the medical record is like the meat of the entire record. So this is where you would type in like your daily exams or any kind of treatments or just daily notes about that animal. And if you weigh the animal, you can put in a weight. So maybe, just for fun's sake, we'll say that this is the next day. And maybe now he weighs 32 grams. And he's, let's see, looking good. It's a very good example. Yes, ma'am.
Now, if we want to go back, say, like to 1350, which came in a couple of weeks ago or whatever, how do we bring that number up?
That's a great question. So I will answer that in 1 second. Let me just finish this thought. Okay, so this little treatment note that I put in, it goes on the bottom here in a log. And actually, well, so now if I were to type in another one maybe a couple hours later, and we don't have to put in a wait. Still looking good. So they go in chronologically, and there's no limit to the number of them that can go in. And I'm just typing in 1 or 2 words. You could type in an entire book report of information. And so if I were writing in long things, it wraps. It doesn't just keep going to the right. It'll wrap. The text will wrap. And you can see it's time stamped, so it knows exactly when it happens. So you can see in your logs when it happens. And if we, normally by default, these entries cannot be edited or deleted, basically to help prevent the integrity of that entry. Although I have those abilities turned on at the moment. So if I were to click on the little wheelie thing to edit this, it says right here who the author of this entry was. And actually, right now it thinks that my name is Word admin, but if I were logged in and my name and my user account was Devin Dombrowski, it would say there. So it actually knows who did it and when they did it.
How do you, like if it came in as an egg, where do you put in that it is now a chick, like when it hatched?
Okay, so if we go backwards, I haven't forgot your question, I promise.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll wait.
So the age here is the admit age. When it hatches or as it gets older, then the best thing I would think to do is type in here hatched.
But would it still then be recorded as an egg?
Does
Like
it go
an
back to
egg
initial
released?
and change, like status of that bird? Is it now a bird, not
It
an
was
egg?
a bird before.
Well, maybe if it hatches, but I mean, does it change the status of that?
That is, the beginning page is just what it was when it came in. Like that page literally just pretend like it goes away afterwards because that's just all the intake information. So you'll always know that that animal came in as an egg. Anything that happens furthermore, like when the egg actually hatches or the time and the date of that, you can enter it into the,
Okay.
and so you can't, that's actually interesting.
So one thing,
Yeah,
we are totally open to new ideas and things to put in here. This is actually kind of the first time somebody really asked that question. Once it turns into an adult, which you should be able to really specify.
No, it's a good idea. There isn't any way to say this bird is now a fledgling, this bird is now a adult, like in the continuing care process. There isn't a way to do that, but it's not a bad idea.
Because you want it searchable.
Right.
So,
well, so it is. You could type in here, hatched today, yada yada, and I haven't talked about searching yet, but when you go to searching, you could search in this field, hatched, and it'll as long as you type that in, it'll find it.
But I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got you. It's not a bad idea. I mean, it could be, we haven't got into any of our extensions yet, but potentially that could be some sort of extension that actually, most people aren't going to do it, aren't going to need that. But if it's really important for, somebody, then it's something that we can use.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you've got like 500 house finches, you're not going to care what age they are.
No. But I mean, that's what
But it's
the
important.
US, they want to know if it's an egg that didn't hatch or a chick that died, or, it
Yeah.
matters
Is
to
it
them.
a special report? What?
They're a threatened species, yes.
Right.
I have to send them notice every time we do anything.
Okay. No, that's. When we're done with this, I want to talk to you more about that because that is really good to know. Okay, so the last thing on this screen I'll mention right now for the moment is that there's these recheck fields, and this is like if you need to remind yourself tomorrow or next week to, check if it's still looking good. You can type in a recheck. Does it look good? and then the date that you want to be reminded, so we'll just say tomorrow. And then you can specify the recheck type, like who should do this recheck, vet, technician, assistant. I've got a volunteer who can figure that out. And update the records.
And where does that information appear? Is it a pop-up or an email? Or?
So there are two ways to get that information. The first, on the left, there's a link that says rechecks.
Okay.
So if I said, said rechecks for tomorrow that are holding in the clinic. Oh. Uh-oh. Did I change it? Oh, see, it's not holding that button. There you go. Okay, so now that, so that's when, and it defaults as today. So if you were to go on the screen for today, you would see it. There also is a report. Today's clinic recheck, tomorrow's clinic rechecks. And it basically just prints out a printable version of that same exact screen. You can just have that with you. Okay, so now to finally answer your question. I'm sorry.
Does all that make sense about rechecks, though? It's a really, really super useful technique. Like, I want to see that animal 4 days later. I got to make sure we're going to check its sutures. And so you put that on there and you say, staff is going to check the sutures 4 days later. You print that record every single day, and then you have a whole list of those animals that you know for a fact that you have to check.
Okay, so there are a total of, I think there was 70 animals in this database right now. So now your question was, if I wanted to see number 50, how would I go to it? Well, it'd be really boring, and if I had a lot of time, I could do it. But so I could sit here and page each one, which would be pretty much a waste of time. The faster way would be in this field here, just to type 50, and it'll bring me right to it.
That's nice.
Now that's one of the ways to search for a record, but maybe you don't remember what its case number is, and all you remembered is that it was a badger, right? But you don't remember what its number was. So what you can do in this quick search field, you can type in badger. Oh, wait a minute. That's not right.
Just a second. Do you print demo cards? Does this happen?
Oh, okay. This is good. I know I did that, and I'll explain why in a second. But suppose I wanted to find a raccoon. Okay, so it found all the raccoons that are in there. And so, okay, the reason why I didn't find the badger, I thought there was a bug, and I got panicked for a second. That badger that will go...
Rachel Smith brought in from Disneyland.
Yes.
That was a long time ago. Maybe last year.
This is Rachel. If we go out to her, so this is that badger, and it actually came in, its number is 1269, so it was last year, and by default this only searches within this year, so I got worried for a second.
Can you search just by band?
But if you put in 12-59, would it come up
You
there?
could, so in the same field you could type in, so if I wanted 12,
That's a 21.
oh, thank you.
We're not there yet.
No, 1269, it will go to that record within last year's records. Now you notice actually, since we're here, everything kind of turned a little bit more red. It's basically to say, hey, you're looking at last year's records, which is fine. Just don't type things in here thinking you're looking at this year's records.
Can you search by like band or any of the identifiers?
Right. So this quick search field, whatever you type in there, it searches across basically every field in the database for that. So if I search for, I think finch was in the words I put in, finch. That'll find all the house finches, but it also found this red-tailed hawk. And why? Because observation. So the word finch is in there. So yeah. So and you can limit these searches by maybe just getting the pending cases. So if you don't want all of them, you can just give me the pending. Now this is pretty helpful in if you're in a quick hurry and you want to find something quickly. But if you want to do something a little bit more specific, like if you wanted to just search within the band fields, if you go to full search on the left, this screen here has all the fields that are in the database. So you would go to the band and you could type in yellow. say search, and it'll find all of them, in this case, had yellow. If I said 1, 2, 3 yellow, it would just find the post. And actually, I'll show you actually. In this case, it should, hopefully. No, they both have the same band. Well, if okay, bad record key. If it only found one record, instead of coming to this screen, it would take you directly to that one record.
Okay.
One quick second. So the last thing I'll mention, on the left there are just recently updated cases, which is, I find super helpful because you're working on a record, you're doing your stuff, and then you walk away for a couple of minutes, and somebody else comes and steals your computer and does something on their record, and then you're all distracted, and you can't remember what channel it was you were working on. Well, it'll probably be in this list because of one of the last ones I was working on, so you can just click on it and go right to it. Yes?
Yeah. Does the program have an autocorrect feature for spelling mistakes?
Well, okay, sort of. Slash, that's the browser is supposed to do that for you, actually. Like the browser, like Firefox or Chrome or Internet Explorer.
So I'm just wondering. So if you were looking for, all the animals that had coccidia and coccidia was misspelled in one of them, it wouldn't pop up, sort of a thing.
Yeah, if it's probably spelled wrong, then yeah, you can't find it.
Be
but
able to use a partial word with like coxy.
yeah, you could, right, exactly.
And is there a recommended browser?
Well, personally, I'm gonna get myself in trouble saying this on the microphone. I would never use Internet Explorer. Sorry, Microsoft. They're never gonna support us now. Only because well, at least older versions of Internet Explorer are very, very buggy and unreliable. The newer versions actually have gotten tremendously better. If you want a good, strong, stable browser,
Or Chrome.
Chrome. The newer versions of Firefox are actually becoming really, really good as well. Generally, most users of this database use Chrome, which is nice to know because they're getting a good, true experience. I guess the best answer I can give you is don't use an old version of Internet Explorer. If you do, I can't guarantee how things are going to work on here. Okay, so to answer to your question, we're going to sort of show into some new fancy features. So basically, out of the box, that's it. There are some other things in here, like there's some other reports that you can print out, including year-end reports. There's an analytics section which will give you some statistics about your records. And all of the records in this version of this database are all bogus, so these analytics don't make any sense anyway. I've got a perfect survival rate all the way across.
When you were entering the day-to-day data and entering the weight, did it show the last weight, or do you have to click on another screen for that?
No, good question. So if I go, I don't remember which one that was, 7. So they go in chronologically. So the only one that does not show up on here is the admit weight.
Okay.
But so there was this one, 32 grams. So if I entered in another one, maybe today it weighs, I don't know how much they weigh. Sure. Are we still in the ballpark? Not. So you can see they show up in there. Now that we have a few weights, there's this fancy button which I didn't show you. You can graph those weights, and it takes all 3 weights, the admit weight and the 2 we've entered in, and shows you a graph.
And is there a way to attach a document? Like if a bird dies, we get a necropsy report. Can it attach to that?
Yes. Thank you for asking. Okay, so there's a few other things I'll show you here a little bit, but we'll go to answering that question. And
What was that question?
So she asked, is there a way to attach a document, like a PDF file from CAS or wherever, or even pictures? So basically, out of the box, this database is meant to be as slim and simple as possible so that any rehabber can use it without any kind of annoying bells or whistles to get in their way. But people often want these more fancy features like that. So if we go back to the settings area, there is extension settings. And
This is something that you guys as a group can figure out what extensions
Yeah.
you want to apply and which ones you really don't need.
So what they are basically extra features to turn on. And you pretty much, you just turn them on once and if they're always on, there's usually not a reason to then turn them off. Yeah, and you decide which ones are best for you. There you go. So yeah, the first one here is attachments. So I'll show you that one. And autocomplete is actually something that would help with what you were talking about. So we'll turn that one on as well. So there are a bunch of them here, and I should probably just turn them all on to show you. Well, I'll turn on the more commonly asked about ones. So there's one that'll help you to keep lab information or prescriptions. What else? This one is, people like that one. And I personally like this one. So now let me show you what they're about. So first of all, if you didn't, besides going to use them to learn about them, they all have details about them that you can click and read, and it explains a little bit more about how they work and what they can do for you.
And is that only for that specific user that's logged in?
No, it's for the accounts. So,
Do you have to be an administrator
to turn these on or turn them off, you do have to be an administrator.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not any old user can just come and start turning these on and off.
Hey, Jeff, are you going to assign
I've already started assigning my staff, and
Okay.
I've got a volunteer
login?
and we'll talk about aquarium and stuff like that too. Yep. And you.
Sorry, I need a picture. I need a picture to show you how it works.
Quick question.
Yes.
All the graphs and stuff like that, can you export those like into Excel or other things like that? So
They,
mess them or
you can print them and you can export them as images or as vector images as well. At the moment, you cannot export them to Excel, but that is something that I do want to add in.
okay.
You can, though, export data into Excel, like just the data from your database, and then in Excel make your own graphs.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's awesome.
Okay, so back in here. So now, so now you see that there's some new links across the top that have shown up, and a few of them are, well, 3 of them are attachments, lab, and prescriptions, which are 3 of the extensions that I turned on. And I'll segue real quick to say, so in this medical record, you could type in your prescriptions or your lab values in there, and there's nothing wrong with doing that because that's, like I said, that's where the meat of the record goes. The catch to doing that, though, is like lab values, especially lab values, but lab values and prescriptions and attachments, they're kind of unique pieces of information, and it'd be really nice to have a more specialized place to put that so that it's usable later on, like you can export it or do some statistics on it later. So once those extensions are activated, you can go here and fill in. So under lab, maybe we did a fecal. We did it today. The direct was negative, the float was positive, and so now it's stored in its own unique place. It has its own unique fields that it goes into. And now if we go back to the continued care screen, you can see that information we just typed in, it shows up here as well. So it gets filtered into the medical record. And it shows up in there chronologically.
So you'd need to find the individual first before you jump over to labs.
Well, no, if I went to lab, I could still page to it or search for it.
Okay.
So on any of these screens, you're always looking at the same animal. And it doesn't matter which one of these tabs you're on, you can just go around the page. Okay, so now it would be the same for prescriptions. If I went here and I wrote up some prescription, it it would filter into that medical record as well. And actually, one thing I'll show you about prescriptions, I guess, is, well, we'll do one of those. So if we did, this is a terrible prescription. Don't ever give 2 mils Medicam to people. And this is not true, but if Medicam or Loxicam was a controlled substance, you could check this box. And that prescription is not very good. It should write out how frequent and all that. So don't use this as an example of how to write prescriptions. So now if we go to continued care, you can see that it filters in. And I did not give it an end date on the prescription, so it says, from the date that I said to start until open, because it thinks it's an open prescription. And now if I went to the report screen, and I'm sorry, I'm sort of skipping around real fast, so I hope I'm not losing anybody. On the report screen, there's a new reports group that came with the prescriptions, and one of them is a controlled substance log. And basically what this does is, it just keeps a log of all the things that you've marked for your controlled substances. It does not record the quantities or the volumes, so this doesn't count for your DEA, but you can use this to help reconcile that form as well. Okay, so now attachments is another thing we talked about.
But in that previous screen, you also had prescriptions due today?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a report here you can print out prescriptions due today, which is exactly what it says. So for the attachments, whether it's a PDF or an image, you can browse for them, or you can take your images or whatever's and just drag them in. And if they're really big, you gotta wait a few seconds. Actually, this would be a good test. I thought that was gonna happen. So right now there's actually a limit on the size of the pictures. So this was a bad example. Let me find a smaller one.
And what is that limit?
At the moment it's 3 megabytes, but it actually will be increasing soon.
And do you have a limit on the amount of data we can have in our database?
No.
Nice.
Is the website able to kind of shift around and stuff if it's on a tablet or something like that?
Yes, and I wanted to show you, I bought an iPad and I wanted to be able to show you that, but apparently there's no Wi-Fi here. But the short answer
There
is...
is. It must be unplugged.
Oh, well, if somebody knows it and knows what the password is.
I do.
Okay, so now we'll put this smaller image in there, which, there you go. So it's attached to the record. If I went there, there's that one. And you can go to this picture or PDF and give it a proper title and date and the source and a description. And now it's attached. And so I didn't show you about printing out the records, but if we printed the record, we could tell it to include these attachments as well. Nice picture. Anyways, I can show you later if you want.
Okay, yeah.
So a few of the other extensions, well, first of all, does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? Are you all mesmerized? Yes.
Actually, I think it's pretty neat.
The intake notes that you've been putting in, will you scroll through those? Because you said you can put in as many as you want. I mean, do you just...
You mean under the initial care screen?
Yeah.
Continued care.
In the continued.
Oh, continued care. Sorry, yeah.
Continued
yes. So actually, I think this record, yeah. So that record has a fair amount.
So if you put in that, it's on Medicam and it's in the continued care, is there somewhere else on this form that has what medications the animal's on? So that you can see right away?
Yeah. So if I went to prescriptions.
Okay, so that's all.
I don't have a good example in here, but if you went to prescriptions, you would see all of the prescriptions that have ever been given, and the ones that are no longer, what's the word I'm looking for?
Discontinued.
They're discontinued because the date has passed. They'll be grayed out. They're still in there for historical reasons, but they'll be grayed out. And the actual prescriptions will be on the top of the list.
Okay, but on the main form,
in here,
they're not really on. Well, they're on the notes, but they're not in the.
Right, so they're in here, but in here it's a little bit more difficult to see which
Right,
ones
that's
are
why I was
active.
asking if there was another place, but, so we just click on prescriptions and then that's where they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Or
also,
you have your prescriptions report.
yeah, the prescriptions due today would have the ones that are due today, and they, should have also.
I'm just wondering, how many places we need to be clicking
Just,
to look.
the short answer is one, just
Okay.
click there.
All right.
So if you typed it into the intake form, or in the intake page, it would show up in prescription?
No, it doesn't go the other way.
Okay,
It
just
only goes
prescription
one
over,
way.
okay.
Okay, so to answer your question about trying to control spelling, one of the extensions I turned on was called autocomplete. And the way that it works is if we go back into settings, there's a link here now that says autocomplete settings. And basically what you do is you specify which fields in the database you want to have an autocomplete drop-down list happen. And the more common fields that have it on are like keywords or city found and places like that. And I already have some set up, so I'll just show you how it works. So if I went to, well here, we'll do this. Let's say, as if we're creating a new record, the city found fields. So one of them, I think it was Monterey or whatever, but if I start typing, it drops down a list of the things that we put in there. So we put all the cities in this area on that list.
So it'll do that with our bird list too, our name?
Actually, the species list is already done automatically for you. So right now, the database knows it's basically every species, bird, mammal, reptile, amphibian in North America. If there's one that's missing, I'd be surprised. Of course, tell me about it. But they're all in there. So that is like basically the best way that the database can help to control bad spelling. Like if somebody spelled Monterey like Monterey might spell.
So is that you guys that put in all that? Like you put in common medications and diseases and all that?
Yeah, we can do that. And I can talk to you guys about some common things that you guys have.
So yeah, I tell you one thing I skipped over, and I'm just realizing right now, is when you all get a plover in, I don't know how it works now, but you could, I'm skipping over Jessica, I shouldn't do that, but as long as Jessica's okay with it, you can go into this database and create the record right there, and then you have your case number and do whatever you do.
Instead of calling us.
And then, okay, so let's see what else. One other thing that I turned on. Oh, okay, so another thing that people often like is to be able to monitor the changes that have happened to the records and see when they changed or who made the changes or exactly what changed. So one way to do that is, let's see if I go, I think 67, was that our first plover? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so, if I come here and, that's not a good keyword, we'll remove that. And the problem with them is, has not hatched yet. That's a big problem. So, we make changes. So, you do your changes to the record as you normally would. Well, one of the extension that's turned on, what?
Really?
Oh, wait.
Are you just
I thought she was giving me a secret signal. It's an extension called version control, and basically it just watches the records and keeps records of the records. So now we made changes in here, and if so you can see there's link versions. So if I clicked on this link here, these are two versions of that information that it's made so far, and you can go and look to see what the values were at this time. And now, we know what was changed, but you can also click compare to previous version, and it'll show you that the values actually changed in those fields. So that you have basically a way to audit what happens with those records. What else? Oh yeah, so I like these shortcuts. Well, first of all, if you need directions to where it was found, you can click on that link, and it takes you to a Google
It's been
map.
an hour.
Has it been an hour? Okay. Well, so there's a bunch of other fancy features in here that I could spend another hour showing you, but let me make sure I answer your questions and maybe show you features for those questions. What do y'all want to know? You don't know everything already.
So switch users just in the upper right-hand corner.
Well, okay, so when you're logged in, you can't just switch user.
Okay.
You have to log out and then log in as a new user. Now, okay, so one thing I'll talk about, if you have multiple users for your account, which you can have as many as you want, it would be really annoying, like if you only had like one computer in your treatment room, to have everybody log in as themselves, because you have to log in, make your changes, and log out, and the next person log in, and that's just a complete waste of time. So I recommend making like a totally generic user that everybody can use.
No,
Okay.
sorry.
Well, it's up to you, of course.
Yeah.
But you can have users for each person, but maybe they use them off their personal computers or.
Well, our goal is to have at least, what we're saying, 4 or 5 iPads.
Yeah, hoping.
Yeah, so that we can have,
If that's what, I mean, then that's perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
and it's mobile friendly.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can show you. It adjusts itself in here.
Okay.
I don't know if you have too much contact with the people up at Sonoma County Wildlife, but they use this database and they pretty much only use it with iPads,
Yeah.
which I think is amazing. And so they can give you a good background on how it feels.
I have used it strictly on iPad, and it is really nice, but it's also nice to have a dock station as well, because if you're typing in like a really big record or you're doing attachments and dragging them in, there's some things that you just can't do on an iPad as easily as you can do on a computer. So iPads are great for running around and entering records, but when you really need to sit and work on a record or do big searches or bring in other information, having a desktop is, you need to at least have one or at least one to do big stuff on. It's just easier. It's just easier to type on a computer than it is on the iPad. But it's incredibly handy because you can take it anywhere. You can go outside as long as you have like a little bit of Wi-Fi service and look at an animal in an aviary and type up your observations right there. It's awesome. But and when you're entering in animals, like at the front desk where you have someone working at the front desk, like there's a computer sitting right there. You just, when you do intakes, you just enter all the information right there. So it's kind of there's a balance. iPads are really great and handy, but I have to say that it's nice to have a desktop also.
Yep.
You can have multiple users logged on, inputting information on different records at the same time.
Different records, yes, absolutely. There's no problem with that, but the same record, no. And I don't have two computers here to show you, but basically, if I were on any of those plovers and somebody else logged in and went to the same plover, they can see the record, but all the fields will be disabled because I'm currently making edits on it. So they wouldn't be able to make changes on it.
So in essence, it's like first come, first serve to the
Yeah.
record
Yeah.
to who can like edit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once I left the plover's record, then whoever, it's up for grabs.
There's no identity about who's on it, so you know.
It does.
which-
It tells you. I can't show you because I don't know the computer, but when you go to it, everything we disable it. Let's say at the top, so and so is currently editing this record.
Okay, so at least you know where to look.
Yeah, you know who to
Get on
say,
it,
hey,
somebody's
yeah.
forgotten to sign off.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Any other questions?
How's it gonna work, Jessica, when we're intaking, the volunteers are intaking, each one of us have to sign on, intake that person, sign out, and then whoever comes with the next one would have to sign on and take.
Volunteers, you only have one.
Would we give
One
our
user.
information to the
Oh,
staff?
okay, so we can all just put volunteer user, or whatever it is, and then.
Yeah, it'll have, because I already have a volunteer sign in. And so any volunteer that's entering the information, I'll just have you guys use that one basic user.
And
And
there's two places, either on intake information or during examiner, that you write your name in
Yeah.
as the examiner. So, or if I'm bringing an animal and I'm admitting an animal, I'm going to write my name saying I'm the person that admitted the animal. Or I did the initial
Oh,
exam
yeah, that's good.
and I'm the examiner, so I'm putting my name in there. Something else that sometimes you can do, go back to a continued care screen. You don't have to do it, but you can put your initials at the end of everything that you write up. So, at the end of that body weight not looking good, and you put JS because the other person looked at it and you weighed it, then you know exactly who looked at it. That's also sometimes very helpful. Yeah.
Are there any internal consistency checks, or, yeah, let's try to stay with that word consistency. If you enter information into a record that definitely conflicts with existing information, does the computer give you any sign that you blew it? It could be something so different as,
Like if the weight's 100 one day and 1 gram the next?
yeah. Also, does it keep weights all in the same units? Does it catch maybe mistakes entering meds?
You attach the units to it.
The units, if you weigh, let's see, a raccoon, and you put in 1,000 grams, and the next day it's 1.1 kilos. That is okay
That's
for you to do.
okay, yeah.
If you say graph weights, it knows to convert that.
Right. But what if somebody, a volunteer, say, forgot to change the units on the scale? And so they're looking at a number that's actually in ounces rather than grams. Okay, so they entered a number, assuming it's grams, but that number, of course, is going to be wildly inconsistent
Right.
with whatever the animal's been weighing all along. Does the computer have any way of flagging that?
Basically, no, but that's a good flag for it to be looking for. One way you could do that. I mean,
It's hard to, I mean, that's a hard thing to make a computer to do, is to recognize too many inconsistencies.
So, yeah.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, some education inconsistencies come out where
Thank you, guys. Sorry, we gotta go.
But like bad prescriptions, like my Medicam prescription, it doesn't know what's right or wrong. I mean, and truthfully, I don't know that I could ever teach it that, because that's just the nature of medicine. What's right or wrong changes over years.
There is one of the extensions that we're looking at potentially developing is a drug calculator, so that there's a way to type in, the weight, the dosage, and something like that, so that we can eliminate some of the calculator error. But you still have to get those numbers correct.
But calculation errors are one of the biggest areas of errors in the hospital or lab or anything like
Yeah.
that.
No, it's
Correct calculations.
and just pulling up the meds themselves. That's how I found.
0.2.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Can you set minimum password requirements?
There are password requirements, actually. So if I go to add new user, these are the rules, and they're fairly strict. I don't think too annoyingly strict,
Good.
but you can't just put in weak passwords. Okay, well, a lot of people often ask, or is that like a head shake, like?
No, you're good.
Okay. People often ask, okay, so I've got all this data in there, how do I get it out? Do I need to get it out? And so to answer your question about exporting a little bit, if I did a search, which of course will find all the pinches and everything else that have the word pinch in it. I can do a few things with this search. I can print this list out, or I could print all these records, but I can also export just these records. So if you did a search on all the hawks whose admit weight was under 1,000 grams, it came from Salinas, or whatever. You can do that search and then export them. And you can either export them to Excel or come separated file. And you just choose which fields you want and get them out.
Can you delete out the two that weren't the finches, that had other finch words, you know what I'm saying? That you just want the finches, you don't want that hawk with the word finch in there in your list?
You can't do that, but if you want to just define finches, the more proper way to that would be to do a search in the species field.
Oh, okay.
So that way you would only find finch. And you could specify, I could just say finch, and that could give me all the house finches and the purple finches and so on. But I could say, finch or house finch, and leave it at that.
In the quick search, if you put Finch, comma, space house, then you'll find all the
Yeah.
Finch, comma, space house.
One of the other ways to get data out, or at least to back up your data, is there's a new extension down at the bottom called Wildlife Rehabilitation MD Backup. And when you turn it on, it adds a little link over on the left for backups. And basically all you do is click the little make new backup button, and it creates the backup file, and then you can download it and save it wherever you want. And what that file is a complete backup of all your records for that year.
But you back up our data as well.
Yes, so that's the other thing, right. So this is just basically you doing it on your own. The database itself is backed up twice a day. So if something catastrophic happens, then we could restore the entire thing. But for your own self-assurance, to feel good, you can do it yourself as well.
And any redundancies at your end at this point?
Uh,
As far as backups, I mean, are you backing up to the same server? You
Both.
have-
The backup files are being backed up onto the same server, so they're easy to get to. But
Okay.
if the whole server burnt down, they're also off-site.
They are, okay. Thank you.
Do you guys have to like work really hard to keep up with any ornithological name changes and stuff? I mean, I don't know.
All
if we do that
of the
specifically, but-
animals that came here, all of the birds came from the American can't say it. American Ornithological Union. So I just assumed that they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And
But
had
yeah,
it
but
right.
they change it so frequently.
Yeah.
Like, are you guys gonna update it? Like, once in a while?
If I know about them, sure. I mean, how do they tell everybody that they made a change?
If they don't, it's not like it's well publicized on the cover of Time or
Right.
anything. So, unfortunately, not well publicized. I was just wondering. We had a weird one.
If there's a really big, obvious change, then yeah, we could
Like a
probably
splitting of
make it,
species or
but
something. Yeah.
they do happen, but they're such,
They're not that frequent.
yeah. I don't think anyone's going to change the name of the house Finch or Scrub Jay or
Yeah.
Stellar's
Any of
Day
ours, any of
or
ours.
Robin anytime soon.
So there's plenty of other stuff here I didn't even talk about that I could spend hours more going over. But I know, Nancy, it has been over an hour. So if there's any last quick questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise,
Or thoughts or suggestions. we're
Or
always
thought,
open
yeah,
to,
maybe.
When are we going to start trying to implement this?
We have all of this year's data in, basic data, all the animals in. So we can start using it. I mean, we've already started using it. We're going to be,
Entering on new birds and stuff?
we're
or
going to
entering
be actually going away from paper next year.
on next year.
yes.
Is there any way to like share information? Like if you had a case that was really just wacky or something and you wanted to see if anybody else around has had an issue like that? Like I've got this wacky raccoon. Anyways, and could you search for like other groups that they did? Or I mean, they have their own account, so you
Right.
can't access it properly.
Right, so that's a good thing. First of all, you can only see your account's data. You cannot look at others, and others cannot look at yours. And so what you're talking about there is like the ultimate goal of all this.
Yeah.
And that ability does not exist yet because what we're trying to do is get more users and more data in there. But yeah, the ultimate goal is that we're all putting in this information which is helpful to maintain our records, but once we've got a ton of information there, we can learn from each other.
Go to share records though.
Yeah, well, so the short answer is no, but it is like
In the future.
very much in the future, yeah. Or not far in the future, but very much promise in the future. One link that I didn't talk about is share a record on the left. And this would be like if you wanted to print out this record, or you can email the record or export this one individually. So we're on that over, and if we just said print this record, that's going to be kind of empty and boring, but here is a printed version of it. And by default, it does not include any of the rescuer's contact information, just to keep that a little more private, as well as the identity stuff. And these extensions, that we've turned on, you can tell the printed version to include that information as well. And as well as with an email, the same checkboxes, and you just put in the to in the subject of the message. And the email sends who you're logged in as, so it sends from you essentially. And then you can export this record and choose the fields that you want. And the last thing on here, it actually, I gotta change the screen real fast to show you this. There's one other tab here, the shared history. Every time you release data out of this record, it makes a copy of that or a note of that. So you know every time the data leaves, you know that it left. So that doesn't really answer your question, but it is a way to help to share. There it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.